Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the online debate of today at the Florence School of Regulation. Thank you, Chiara, for arranging all of this. I'm Nicola Rossetto from the school, and I am a research associate here. The issue of today, well, we could say it's very important. It's a question. What market design do we need for a decarbonized and a decentralized electricity sector? As you know, electricity is not an easy commodity to trade. We need several rules. We need detailed rules to take care of interactions, externalities, and so on. In Europe, during the liberalization and integration process of the 90s and the 2000s, we developed certain rules. Well, we may say that the rules are still in a process of development, but usually while doing this, we had in mind the electricity system of the 20th century, with large thermal power plants producing electricity and then transmitting and distributing it to, let's say, more passive customers, more passive loads. Today we are in the middle of an energy transition. The electricity system is changing. Renewables, distributed generation, electric vehicles, electrifications of other end uses, the availability of digital technologies and the like create challenges for those rules of the past, but at the same time create opportunities. So we may be interested in new rules. Today, Europe is aware of that, is financing several projects on this broad area. We will present to you today two of these projects, SmartNet and Osmose. And to do that, we invited four speakers that are kindly accepted to be with us today. You see them on the screen. I will present them briefly. They are Guillaume Lehec from ENGIE Global Energy Management. He is head of smart grid and local optimization, and he is involved actually in another similar European project called Interflex. Then we have Gianluigi Migliavacca from Milano, from the Ricerche sul Sistema Energetico, where he coordinates the SmartNet projects. Then we have Tim Schittecarte, who, like me, is a research associate here at the Florence School. He deals with issues like regulation of network charges, electricity network codes, and will be part of the interface project. And finally, we have Professor Christoph Weber from the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany, and he is involved in the other research project that we will present you today, which is Osmose. So thank you very much for being with us. It's a pleasure to have such a nice bunch of experts on this topic. Let's start. First, presentation of the projects. I will ask first Gianluigi and then Christoph to present their two projects. They have 5 minutes. Please try to stick to the time. Gianluigi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicolo. So I have the pleasure here to present the project SmartNet, which I coordinate. And if you turn the slide, we can see what are the outline of the project and the partners that are inside the consortium. Well, the motivation for SmartNet is that on one side we are assisting to an explosion of deployment of RES energy, and so generators that are characterized by a variability pattern, and so need more reserve in order to be correctly included into the system. And on the other side, especially in distribution, we are assisting to a similarly epochal aspect, that is massive deployment of distributed resources. And those resources, that is also a new aspect, could be in the future resources that could be possibly varied in their regime of production and consumption, in order to make them them part of the reserve retrievement process, and so of the reserve markets that are increasing their importance, also due to the fact that the variability pattern of the renewable energy sources is pushing towards more reserve. And so what is needed in order to make the distributed resource participate into ancillary services markets is to make it possible for TSO and DSO to have a dialogue. And so it's important to investigate architectures for optimized interaction between TSO and DSO in managing the purchase of ancillary services from subjects located in distribution. That is the first bullet and also the main point that the SmartNet project is investigating. In order to do so, we are investigating 3 national cases, Italy, Denmark, and Spain. And in order to investigate these cases, of course, we need a simulation platform and scenario simulations. And in order to make it possible, we developed a huge simulation platform that is able to include on one side the physical network and on the opposite side the ancillary services market, in particular for MFRR, so tertiary regulation. And in between, of course, the layer that is devoted to aggregation and disaggregation of the resources. We have 5 coalition schemes. They are presented in the next slide, but please wait in order to close everything before leaving to the next slide. No, the one before. Okay. The 5 coalition schemes are compared on the basis of a cost-benefit analysis that was set up in order to investigate which one is, for all the 3 different countries, the most efficient one. And additionally to that, the simulation platform is also used in a lab experiment in order to test real controller devices. But on top of the simulation platform and those kinds of tests, we have also 3 physical pilots that demonstrate physical capability, including also the ICT deployment, in order to make it possible to really implement 3 of out of the 5 coalition schemes that are investigated. Those 3 pilots are physically deployed, one in Italy, and it is about using hydropower stations located in a remote alpine valley in order to participate into AFRR and MFRR markets. Second pilot in Denmark, investigating the possibility to include as reserve providers and flexibility providers swimming pools, so actually thermostatically controlled loads as providers of flexibility for the system. And last but not least, in Spain and Barcelona area, distributed storage devices located into the radio base stations of the Vodafone partner of our project. Those are small storage devices that are usually not used, but they are there in order to ensure possible backup in case of unavailability of the local distribution networks, in order to make it possible for the telecommunication networks to survive to a blackout. But actually, as they are not used and they are a distributed storage, why not thinking of using them in order to provide services for the system? And that is what we are investigating here. So as consortium, we have different partners. We have TSOs, in particular Terna, the Italian TSO, and as the Danish TSO Energinet. We have 3 DSO, one for country, in particular Endesa, that is the DSO from one of the most important in Spain, plus one in Italy, Dina, and one from Denmark, Sudenergi. We have 2 manufacturers, Siemens and Celta, and we have Vodafone. So those are the 5 coordination schemes. One is centralized and is the classic scheme in which the TSO controls the balancing market, and resources can participate from distribution just as pre-qualified from the DSO. That is denominated coordination scheme A. Second cohesion scheme, the B, is one in which we have a local congestion management market managed by the DSO, and then the spare resources are passed to the balancing market that is managed by the TSO globally. Then we have the C, that is a share balancing responsibility model in which each one is a king at home. So TSO makes balancing and congestion management for the transmission network, and the DSO the same for the distribution network, and they agree on an exchange, the one marked in yellow, of flows between the two areas. That is pre-agreed. Then we have a common market, cohesion scheme D, in which TSO and DSO together manage the market, and both constraints in transmission and distribution are included into the clearing algorithm. And then we have the E that we didn't implement because we found it too critical from the technical and from the regulatory point of view, is a sort of mixture of intraday market together a real-time session. So it's one in which we have the possibility to manage settlement of the positions in real time of the real-time market participants, and at the same time for the TSO and DSO retrieve the resources for the services. Okay, that is more or less the overview.
Thank you, Gianluigi. Now, Christopher, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I have to present a 4 years project in 5 minutes, and I will try to move myself on the slides. Yeah. So Osmose stands for Optimal System Mix of Flexibility Solutions for European Electricity, and this slide tries to show how different parts in that project are connected together. And so we have an important part, which is here on the upper right side, the TSO-driven demonstrations. There are a total of 4 demonstrations led by RTE in France, Terna in Italy, Eleš in Slovenia, or at the Slovenian-Italian border, and by REE in Spain. And those demonstrations are complemented by what I would call a top-down approach, which explicitly tries to identify this optimal system mix. That's work package 1, led by TU Berlin. And then we have here in the left lower part the work package 2, which then specifically looks at the topic of today's webinar, which is market designs and regulations, and where myself and my team here and in Essen are strongly involved, and we are also in the role of scientific advisor to the project. And then we have obviously also tasks devoted to scaling up and replication and to dissemination. So I'm not talking about a project near to completion, rather we are in our 2nd quarter, so it's intermediate insights and results that I will discuss in the following. So just to highlight on the demonstration side what flexibilities are demonstrated for different grid services. We see here on the one side different types of flexibility providers, and here we see different types of flexibility needs in current and especially future electricity systems. And we see here storage is a focal point of the demonstrations, especially in work package 3 and 4, but we have also flexibilities provided on the demand side, especially in work package 5, and also we have flexibility provided by grid elements, notably facts, and we have a lot of those flexibilities that not only address the reserves or the frequency control, but also congestion management. Before coming to the market design issues, this one did not work. It should move to the next slide. Okay. That was one. There's something seems to go wrong, but let's move ahead. What we have identified as key challenges for market design in view of flexibilities is the temporal and spatial coordination, and a general hypothesis is that so far in the process of deregulation and market liberalization in Europe, the focus has been more on the temporal dimension and less on the locational evaluation of flexibility. And what we need now is to move from a large scale to a small scale perspective, because, as mentioned by Nicolo in his introduction, we have a more distributed system. We have also more grid congestions, which obviously we want to alleviate through grid expansion, but still we have these challenges, and we have increasingly need for locational coordination. This is just to show, I don't want to go into the details. We have, the colleagues from Nesta have made an investigation among the demo participants. What are synergies between the different functionalities and the services, and where are barriers for entry? And so what we see in that large graph to the right is that there are several barriers to participating in ancillary services and system services, but we have also barriers on the valuation of investment deferral and transmission and distribution management, and we have still issues with cross-border valuation of flexibilities. Now coming to the market design, that's our current discussion status. So we have decided for work package 2 which market designs we want to specifically focus on. In our model-based analysis, we have also a number of simulation tools that will be employed. So on the one hand, with the temporal coordination, we will focus on the short-term and balancing market. We will also have a look at the long-term incentives that result from the outcomes of the short-term market. So the basic idea is to get the prices right on the short-term markets, and that's our focus in work package 2. And the other question then is, what about the spatial granularity? Will we stay with some improved zonal design, or the alternative might be a nodal market design? And this will be also at the core of our investigations. So we have basically agreed upon to investigate 2 basic market design alternatives. The one is the current market design, which is power exchange with zonal pricing, so market based on electricity exchanges with zonal prices. And the second basic alternative is to move towards the kind of US or North American model, where we have an independent system operator who operates a power pool with nodal prices. And then obviously these are the 2 basic alternatives, but within those alternatives we investigate more specific aspects, including notably how redispatch markets could be organized, or inclusion of local flexibility markets in the case of zonal pricing, and also some increased implication of consumers in the nodal market. So,
thank you. Thank you, Christopher. I think we need to start moving to the next session, because the time is always a tyrant. And we had the overview from Gianluigi and Christopher of their 2 projects, one more at the end, the other still in the middle of its implementation. Now we try to address the issues a bit more into detail. For the sake of simplicity, we split the issue in 2. First, we address the problems of wholesale energy markets, and then we will look more at the ancillary services procurement and the local level. So I would like to ask Tim, according to you, what are the key limitations of the current market design in Europe when it comes to promote flexibility at the wholesale level? And if there are limitations, what are the most promising solutions in the longer term? Given that, are we going in the right direction or not with the implementation of the network codes and the adoption of the clean energy package? Try to give 3 bullet points on these in 5 minutes, Tim. Thank you.
I have only 2. So, hello everyone. I will repeat part of what Christophe already said, but I will go a bit further in what the clean energy package and the electricity network codes are saying about these things. So first, flexibility. How do I define flexibility? Flexibility means you're able to change what you were planning to do in terms of generational consumption on a very short notice following an external signal. What does that mean? Is that electricity, it has a specific value over time, and that value can also change within time over location. So if wholesale prices are not priced at a very short temporal and locational granularity, then flexibility is not valued enough and will need out-of-the-market solutions, being redispatch or balancing, to deal with these issues. So first, about location. We come from vertically integrated monopolies at national level, where transmission and generation was fairly well coordinated, and big power plants which were easily known where to site them, and when they were placed at a certain location, they stayed there for a long time. The only, or in main cases, the weak links were cross-zonal links, so therefore we had this kind of integration using zonal approach, where there were bidding zones which were equal to national territory. Now what happens now, this copper plate assumption becomes a bit more difficult because we have renewables siting in very unpredictable locations, and the coordination between transmission and generation is not that strong anymore due to unbundling, but it has of course other advantages. So therefore we see a lot of flow patterns which are happening outside of the market, and we need to rethink bidding zone structures. If we don't do so, then we have an issue with redispatch. So what is the clean energy package doing about this? What are the network codes doing about this? First, we're thinking about a bidding zone review. So the clean energy package talks about a change in governance, giving more power to the European Commission to change bidding zones. Also, there is a legal, let's say, a legal obligation for TSOs to offer more capacity, cross-zonal capacity, to the market. And if they cannot do so, then there might be a discussion about bidding zone reconfiguration. Because what does it mean if TSOs have to offer more capacity to the market? It means that they probably have to do more internal redispatch, so it will become more expensive to keep the bidding zones as they are. So therefore, a bidding zone reconfiguration would become more discussable. Maybe in the longer term we'll think about nodal pricing, but in the shorter term I think the main focus is on reconfiguration of bidding zones, and therefore with a reconfiguration, flexibility at certain locations will be valued more and will need less redispatch. The other issue is the temporal dimension. So we come from a system where we had big generators with stable, or let's say predictable output. So in that case, a day-ahead market with 1 hour products was fine. In real time, we could expect that it was fairly well respected. Now we have renewables, which are harder to predict in terms of output. So therefore, this day-ahead commitment 1 hour doesn't work anymore to make sure that they will respect what they traded in kind of a physical delivery. So therefore, we need to develop shorter-term markets. And also what is important in that respect is the time granularity of how your imbalances are accounted for, and the time granularity of the trading products. So what does the clean energy package do about this? It has a legal obligation for every country by 2025, without exceptions, to have an imbalanced settlement period of 15 minutes. Now in many countries it's 30 minutes or 1 hour, some countries already 15. And there's another obligation that all trading products, that there should be at least trading products in day ahead and intraday with these 15 minutes time granularity, while now day ahead is 1 hour. So that will pose some computational issues for the algorithm, but it will allow market parties to trade closer to what they will deliver in real time, wherefore there might be less of a need in balancing. So this is already quite well developed, as in Germany we saw balancing costs going down, even though they were renewables, but there's still room for improvement. So by having these locational and temporal, let's say, characteristics of electricity better priced at wholesale level, flexibility will be better valued and will need less, let's say, out-of-the-market solutions such as redispatch and balancing. And the other discussion, I think the next one will be about that we can also include these flexible resources in order to do this redispatch and balancing. But this is not this debate, because I was talking about how can we adapt wholesale in order to have lesser need of what comes after. This would be my kind of vision on flexibility for wholesale.
Thank you, Tim. Christophe, and then Guillaume, any reaction to this? Any insights, Christophe, from Osmose, from the preliminary research at Osmose?
I found Tim's reasoning quite straightforward, and he makes the clear link to the EU window package. But I think we have to be aware that we have this mid-term perspective to 2025, perhaps 2030, where the wholesale markets can be improved, and where we also, according to what we have observed in Germany, if we have properly organized wholesale markets, including competitive procurement of ancillary services, we see costs of procurement of flexibilities going down, and also the need of procuring flexibilities. But what we are investigating in Osmose are partly solutions that tend to towards the time horizon 2030, 2050, and there we have, I believe, to rethink how in general we can remunerate flexibilities. So we have the possibility to remunerate them through short-term markets, through longer-term contracts, or not remunerate them, but to ensure that they are provided through some administrative requirements. This has, for example, been a case in the past for reactive power, where the large generators, by being connected to the grid, agreed that they will be able to provide reactive power. My point is, short-term markets, as they have been in the focus of EU market design so far, will not be the solution to all the problems. We have services, grid services like FlexStart capability, where I'm convinced, and the same, I'm also quite sure about reactive power, that short-term markets will not be the solution to the problem.
This is interesting. It's interesting, I would say.
Key point with flexibilities is that who is demanding flexibility? It's the system operator, which in the European case are the grid operators. But on each location we have a monopsony. We have just one responsible grid operator. So it's a specific type of market, and in the case of reactive power it's even more difficult, because part of the reactive power can be provided by the grid operator itself. So the grid operator is in the same time the market operator, the single demand-side agent, and part of the supply competition. I believe that will be very tricky to find rules to solve that. So my impression on the current moves of the EU is that it's going in very good direction when frequency services are concerned. We have in the energy balancing directive clear rules, and we have platforms for implementation like Picasso or Mari or Terra. It's more difficult when it comes to congestion management as a grid service. I've been involved in quite some research about a bidding zone reconfiguration. We have also published papers on that. I am not sure that really this is a very valid solution to the issue, because you need to fix 5 years ahead, more or less, the bidding zones, and there's a lot of uncertainty in these 5 years. And unless you really reflect this uncertainty at the moment of fixing the bidding zones, you might end up with bidding zones that not really value the flexibilities that are needed within the 3 or 5 year period of validation of validity of the bidding zone. Yeah, so
thank you.
And when all the other local system services, and it becomes even more complicated. But on the other hand, I believe those are more important to address after 2030. I stop here.
Thank you, Christoph. Actually, you give us the opportunity to move directly to the next item, let's say, the other aspects that I wanted to address with all of you in this online debate, because we discuss now, try to promote flexibility at the wholesale level at the, when trading energy. But as everybody knows, when energy is not only the only thing traded, we have also a lot of ancillary services that are procured via market or non-market based mechanism. And as you mentioned also, Christoph, there is the issue still largely unexplored of the distributed resources that can provide those services, and until now were almost not exploited in our electricity system. So I will ask to Guillaume basically the same 3 questions that I asked to Tim and Christoph, but changing, let's say, the object, not wholesale energy, but ancillary services and the distributed resources for them. Can you tell us where are the key limitations in the current market design? What could be, if you have an idea, the solutions for the future, and where is Europe going to? Guillaume.
So first, a quick word about flexibility, because we were talking about wholesale markets and so energy and capacity markets, and I just wanted to tell that for me, flexibility is not about energy. This is about service, and even if flexibility can lead to an energy trading, the flexibility is really a service in terms of a legal view, and this is important because sometimes we are talking about market of flexibility, but there is a market of energy and there is an ancillary services mechanism. To date, flexibility needs are provided by power generation plants and increasingly by demand-side response, mainly in the B2B market. TSO are opening more and more the opportunity for the demand response to participate in those mechanisms. The pace is different depending on the country and the regulations in force in those countries. However, I believe that we can say currently that this movement is at work and should eventually allow equal treatment between service providers when the service is the same. The break today includes the following. First, lack of market for all ancillary services products, which limit the visibility on the prices and the participation of the demand response. This point should naturally evolve in the future toward a level playing field between the technologies. Second break, a break regarding the coupling of production and consumption capacity to offer a global flexibility service. This break does not allow to take advantage currently of the structural advantages of each type of flexibility by making more complex the expansion between these assets, which are complementary. Indeed, it is easy for a generation asset to lower its production and for a consumer to lower its consumption. So it would be interesting to bundle them. However, it is not always possible, and this break should be regulated by developing asymmetric flexibility product purchase, for example, or by accepting mixed entity formation. There is also a break to the participation of a site on several mechanisms simultaneously. For example, by relying on different kind of flexibility. You may have on the site long duration flexibility and short duration flexibility. And currently it is difficult to sell the same site on different ancillary mechanisms. So there is another question, the services for the local level, because we were mentioning the need to make new services at the local level to facilitate the absorption of renewable energy and electrical vehicles. And this is indeed an important point. And we are testing in France with Enedis different mechanisms, and so we've got first results to share. First is the difficulty for the recruitment of flexibility. And it depends on several factors. First one, the type of flexibility which is required. And the DSO or the TSO usually doesn't know really currently what are their needs. So it is difficult for us to recruit the flexibility. So this is the first point, and it has an impact because either it is to postpone an investment or to maintain the supply of an area in the event of an incident or the network at work. It is not the same needs. Second point, the ratio between the necessary flexibility capacity at the local level and the flexibility potential at the scale of the zone. And if the need of flexibility is too high, it is very difficult to be sure that we can recruit the flexibility. Also, another point is the sociology of the area that influences a lot the acceptance rate of flexibility offer. Another point is the type of customers, residential or CNI, and the producer kind, PV or windmill, and therefore it has an impact on the flexibility at the local scale, which is available. And last but not least, and this is the most difficult point at this stage, the value that we can extract from the flexibility at the local level. Indeed, this value must be high enough to interest flexibility provider and low enough to interest DSO to postpone investment. So this is a key issue, and currently we have no answer. And several problems arise for those mechanisms at the local level. First one, the lack of depth and liquidity of the market. Second point is the durability of those offers, especially when the DSO wants to postpone an investment. Indeed, flexibility provider can arbitrate between local value and global value. And this is a true competition. And currently, it is not always possible to stack the value between local and national. And so currently, we have no certainty about the local flexibility mechanism we should organize. But the good news is that we have currently few needs on the medium voltage or low voltage level. And so we should take advantage of this and take the time to build progressively those mechanisms, because it is really tricky currently to build it from scratch, and prepare ourselves, even if currently there is no value. And this is a tricky point. There is no value, but there is a need to prepare ourselves. And so maybe we should find, for example, a subsidies solution to create artificially this market now, test it, build it, and be ready when it is required. The big principle should be the following. First one, we exchange services and not energy. This is not a new bidding zone at the local level, but a service exchange zone. Second point, we should have a fixed part remuneration in order to facilitate the development at the local level. Third point, the DSO should be a neutral player because it is a buyer of the flexibility, and so the DSO shouldn't be part of this local mechanism. except if there is no offer of aggregator at the local level. But in this case, we should ask ourselves, why is there no aggregator offer? Does it mean that there is no value or no flexibility offer? Because I wonder how a DSO could be more efficient than an aggregator to propose flexibility at the local level. And last point, we should have equality between all the participants, so a level playing field between all the technologies at the local level. And so, obviously need coordination between global and local level to avoid imbalances and so on, but we discussed that earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Guillaume, because you touch many interesting points, and actually you show that the way we see the electricity system is with the lens that were correct 10 or 20 years ago, or even the concept of unbundling, of the role of neutral market facilitator. Sometimes we address them still with the eyes of 20 years ago. And you mentioned also the need for coordination between the local and the transmission level, and this is actually what Gianluigi investigated in SmartNet. And in some cases, they found distribution grids where the problems are already today, like in Alto Adige, Südtirol. Right, Gianluigi? Do you have few comments to what Guillaume said based on SmartNet?
For sure, distribution grids are an opportunity for providing services, but at the same time, giving a role to the DSO is something that is fully reliant on the possibility by the DSO culturally and technically to take up a leading role, or in any case an active role in this kind of difficult market. And so from that point of view, it's important to define also what will be the role of the DSO for the future. If the DSO will have to consortiate in order to create a basin for local markets that will be credible from the point of view of organizing a market and so on. But in any case, even supposing that all that has been done, it is important to compare what is a traditional scheme in which the TSO organizes the market and the DSO has a passive role. That is what in my previous presentation I have denominated coordination scheme A, the first one, with other schemes in which either there is a local management by the DSO, and those are the two that are reported above in this slide, or schemes in which there is no local market, but there is an active role of the DSO that requires, of course, culturally and technically a redefinition of the role of the DSO itself. So the five coordination schemes, but the E was not implemented, as I said previously, are located in this bidimensional space in which we have on the horizontal axis the DSO engagement, on the vertical axis the local DSO market, yes or not, in different ways. From that point of view, we wanted to test everything for the three countries, all coordination schemes, so from A to D for Italy, for Denmark, and for Spain. And in order to compare them, please next slide, we decided to, we decided to adopt a common CBA that is based on cost, so to say, so the most obvious CBA that could be decided. So we have, of course, temporally speaking and logically speaking, first a tertiary market that retrieves resources for MFRR, and we suppose that this market is coping together with balancing, but also with congestion management. Then we have residual congestion management and imbalance that this market, the tertiary market, wasn't able to cope with, and that is due to the fact that there are forecasting errors, and also to the fact that, for instance, the network seen by the tertiary market is not a real one, but it's maybe a more simplified one. And so there could be also residual congestion that has to be solved with called unwanted measures, that are measures like load shedding, that is an exceptional one and should not be, and we will see in the result, are actually not common for the system. And then those measures will cause, in any case, together with the residual imbalance, further imbalance for the system. But we have, of course, the continuous process of the AFRR that is located into the physical layer and is coping with all errors and actuates errors regarding, of course, balancing, and actuates by imposing some action to those resources that participate in the mechanism. And the idea is that, of course, the prices, the bid prices into the tertiary market are normally more convenient or lower. Of course, depends if positive or negative, but in any case, lower with respect to the prices that we can have on AFRR, because AFRR requests a more swift and prompt and valuable service. And so, in principle, what we could find ourselves to have is that correction scheme A that doesn't consider congestion in transmission, in distribution, will have less resources needed into the tertiary market, but by disregarding the distribution congestion would require more intervention by FRR that is more expensive than that. And so we would expect that by summing up the two contributions, the blue one for the tertiary and the red one for the secondary AFRR, correction scheme A, so the traditional one, is more expensive. Actually, that is a case that we showed for Spain, but it's common also for Denmark. I didn't show this because it's very similar. As a very low congestion in distribution for 2030, because we come from a situation in which the DSOs were accustomed to have an overbuilding of distribution networks, and so there is a sort of redundancy of the hardware, and due to that congestion is very rare, even after 10 years after supposing to abandon the fit and forget mechanism. And so due to that, of course, the results of correction scheme A and of the one in which you also consider distribution, go to the one for Spain, okay, are very similar. And that is something new. So that seems to say that correction scheme A and D are, of course, very similar in results. And so correction scheme A that is the easier to implement could be more interesting. But that is, I want to underline, due to the fact that the fit and forget policy is still very active there. So we should maybe see on a more remote situation or a more congested situation in which congestion is more important, and due to that we see that possibly correction scheme A is more expensive. By contrast, correction B and C, that are the ones with the local market, are more affected by A, from problems of local lack of liquidity, and B, from the non-optimized situation that, of course, a two-steps optimization is not optimal because it brings to a suboptimum. So that is more or less what we found for Spain. In Italy, we have a more congested situation, so we are waiting for the results of Italy that are still not available, but I will expect that in Italy, correction scheme D will be the most profitable one.
Okay. Thank you, Gianluigi. So you complemented, let's say, the opinion of Guillaume. It depends on the grids, and some distribution grids are still okay, and probably with, let's say, less radical innovation in design of the market, we can cope very well. In other cases, maybe would be different. It would be interesting to compare the case with maybe some German distribution grids, which are frequently more congested, also because they sometimes are much more full of renewables, also because sometimes they have even medium or even, I would say, high voltage lines within them. But it's now time to turn to our audience. I saw that there was quite a bit of activity on the audience. By looking at the questions, one was already a bit answered. It was more or less on cost benefit of the various schemes of SmartNet, and Gianluigi just provided an answer. Another question interesting was about the level playing field for the different technologies. And Maria Antonietta was asking, apart from FFR and voltage control, what kind of ancillary services can be open to intermittent resources? Maybe Christoph has an opinion, or a team?
Well, I would say on the frequency control side, there have been experiments even to provide primary reserves, so FCR in the new nomenclature, out of wind turbines. I basically believe those services can all be provided by renewables if there is enough renewable power available. Just one point, we have to differentiate in the future between situations with renewable scarcity and with excess renewables, and reserves should be provided by renewables when we have excess renewables. When there is still conventional generation needed to fill the gap, then this one can also provide the services.
Okay. Tim, do you want to add something?
No, I think most has been said. I just had one remark. When I hear about these local markets, and especially for redispatch, that it is important to keep into account the influence of other markets on these local markets, because in the end electricity is a sequence of markets. So if you allow for market-based redispatch at TSO and DSO level, there are certain issues. I think Guillaume already said there's an issue with market depth sometimes. There's a market power, maybe few parties can play in a certain node. There is an issue that maybe their market is not delivering, which could be then an issue that you have to disconnect load because you were thinking that you could solve it market-based. And there's another issue which is not highlighted enough, I think, in the public debate, is when you go from a larger geographic zone in wholesale to like a more local zone, you can play in the wholesale in order to create issues which you will be paid for to solve yourself in redispatch. This is the Inkideck game, and I think it's gaining popularity in the German discourse. I see some papers popping up, but all these local markets, they will have to deal with these different types of gaming. So then in the end there is a discussion whether you want to go for market-based redispatch, which has also been promoted by the clean energy package, and it's also been promoted to do market-based flexibility procurement for grids, because if you do the old approach, which would be kind of a cost, you just pay back the cost, you cannot really work with these new resources, because demand and maybe renewables or batteries, you don't really know what are their costs to go up and down. So you need a kind of a market-based approach. A market-based approach can also have competition, and you send better signals of where to put these flexible resources. So there is a trade-off between allowing for gaming but allowing for the benefit of competition and the inclusion of these new resources. So I think that's a very important point which has not been raised enough until now.
So you are referring to the idea of also implementing some kind of antitrust or anti-market abuse practices, which of course become more and more complicated to implement by the regulatory authorities when you don't have any more clear variable cost in offering these services or this energy, because either you don't have any fuel to use, or the assessment of the cost for not maybe demanding electricity could be very subjective and so difficult to assess. Maybe on local markets, Guillaume want to give a reply to Tim.
Yes, on the local market, there is indeed a risk of gaming. There is also a risk in terms of price of the offer. However, I think that some mechanisms could avoid this. For example, by capping the price you can propose. For example, by following the cost of the flexibility provider on the area where you have no real competition. So indeed, those mechanisms are required in order to avoid that the local markets are used for gaming purpose. Yes, you're right. I agree.
Thank you. And,
yeah, I agree.
So we see that there are really a lot of issues on the table, a lot of room for investigation and from exchanging experiences. Some of the participants even mentioned maybe you have to look at other countries or what other parts of the world are doing. Someone is mentioning Canada. Other suggest to create even a more granular market than the dimension of a distribution grid. Maybe this is too much. Probably in that case we would have a marketing where only one or two entities are playing, which could be a very particular market. Time, unfortunately, is running out. So let me just give three remarks and then to thank my guest of today. If you want to know more about SmartNet and all the results of this project in which FSR was also a partner, please book a ticket for Arona in North Italy, close to Milano, where SmartNet will hold the final workshop on the 16th of May. Then, if you want to know more on how to integrate renewables and the system operation and market, electricity markets in Europe, but not only in Europe, also in other parts of the world where markets are implemented for electricity, you can join in Florence our residential training that will take place, unfortunately, on the same days of the final workshop of SmartNet. You have time until Monday, the 15th of April, to register. And finally, if you want to look more at the electricity network codes in Europe and their implementation, you can register for our online course that will take place in autumn. And Tim is one of the instructors of that course. The recording will be available, so you will be able to access them and watch it again if you miss something. I really thank you, Gianluigi, Christophe, Guillaume, and Tim for joining me today. I thank you, Chiara, for managing all the technicalities. And I hope to see you soon, either online or even better, in the physical world somewhere soon. Thank you very much.